However, Curtis, you had the big fella down at number 18. We chatted a little bit about this last night.
I just see him in the same category as like Jones and Darnold. Like if you think about last year, if you watched him, watch me words, boys, watch me words. He's gonna be trash this year, mate. Absolute trash.
Yeah, I'm not.
Darnold jumps him, Jones jumps him.
Queensland, it's a miracle. Oh yeah! What about that one? Unbelievable. Balotelli, Aguero. Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle. Oh, the ball is close. He's given him. He's given him. Peter Siddle's got a hat-trick on his birthday.
Welcome back to episode 38 of the On the Ball podcast. Today I'm joined by my NFL experts, James Curtis and Christian Pilcher. How are we, lads?
Yeah, good, mate. How are we?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah,
how are you,
not
Curtis?
bad, Cork.
Did you watch a bit of the footy last night, lads?
I did.
Yeah, I watched it all.
Collingwood's looking pretty good, have to say.
Win for them. It was actually a fairly sizable night in sport last night. You had the Collingwood getting up. Then England actually got off to a good start in the test match, which was surprising after the first half hour. The lads are 3 for 207. Stokesy Sibley putting on a clinic. And then, I don't know if you saw it this morning, but Real Madrid sealed their first La Liga title in like 4 years or something. So congrats to all the Real Madrid players. They're all big listeners of the On the Ball podcast. So congratulations to them.
Nah, fuck them.
Oh, it's a bit harsh, mate. It's a bit stiff. That moves. But today we're talking about NFL fantasy quarterbacks. So I don't know if you listened to, well, not you specifically, Curtis, but the people listening listened to the last episode. But I said that from now on until the NFL season, about once a week, we're going to be doing an NFL fantasy related episode, since I just love NFL fantasy that much. So we're starting off with the big boys. We're starting off with the quarterbacks. We've all made like a top 20 list, and I've averaged it out, and we've got a top 12 here today because obviously 20 or whatever would take too long to talk about. So we're just going to go from 12 to 1. We're just going to chat about why they're in that position and so on and so forth. So without further ado, should we just get into it, lads?
Indeed. Are we starting at 1 or 12?
We'll go to 12.
Oh, okay.
We'll keep them hanging.
Spicing it up a bit.
To be honest, it's probably more spicy to go the other way, but that's just a wrong thing to do, is to start at 1 and go to 12.
Got to leave some suspense for the
everyone knows who's 1 and 2. But anyway, all right. So based on average, we had a very close tie for like 11th, 12th, and 13th, but I made the decision, and we cut out a famous quarterback. Some say the GOAT, so he's missed out. The people who did make the top 12, we're going to touch on in next week's episode, which will kind of be a quarterback episode where we chat about people who like could potentially be bolsters and stuff like that. But in 12th, we've got Aaron Rodgers.
Oh.
I feel like we should clap or something. So Curtis, he had an average position of 13. His average draft position on the Fantasy Pros website is actually 13 as well. So we're on the money there, lads. Curtis, you had him in 8th. Why did you have him so high?
Well, he's not a complete dual threat quarterback. I said this to you last night. On fantasy, I'm a huge fan of dual threat, because if you can't get it done throwing, then you can get it done running, and vice versa. So it just means you can accumulate points either way if you have to. So while he's not a complete dual threat, he's certainly got some legs on him. So if he needs to get out and bolt because the arm's not working too well, he can do that. So I thought he was a bit better than a few quarterbacks that had lower down, just to name a few, like Brady. So yeah, I thought he's obviously, I reckon he's going to bounce back from last year, bit of a better year hopefully. So I had him a bit higher than 12, but yeah, he should have a good year, and he's seen around that probably late single digit to early teen kind of thing. So Yeah, about right.
Yeah, Pilch, what do you think about A-Rod? You had him in 12th, so pretty
Yeah.
much spot on there with
Well,
what the average was.
as you boys know, I'm a big fan of Aaron Rodgers, and I hold him in high regard in the real life terms as one of the best quarterbacks in the comp. But for fantasy this year, I'm not too bullish on him because I was saying this to you the other day, Corker. I can't see where his like 3,000, 4,000 yards is going to come from this season. Obviously, you've got Adams who will get 1,200, 1,300 yards. But other than that, you don't even know who his number 2 receiver is going to be. I mean, it's looking like it'll be Alan Lazard, but can't really expect too much from him. He'll probably throw a few to Jones and Williams at running back, but yeah, I just can't see him putting up the big numbers, if I'm honest. So I think, I had him at 12.
Yeah, and if you've done the maths, his average position was 13, and you guys have had him at 8 and 12, so that does mean I've been pretty low on the big fella. I've actually got him in 19th. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, mate.
You're kidding.
All right, so in the second half of 2019, he was the 29th ranked quarterback in the league in terms of fantasy points. So suck on that one, suck on. So that is pretty much one of my major factors. 29th in the second half. He was only 16th overall last year, so it's nothing special. And yeah, nothing's really improved for the team, so I don't really see, apart from himself, I don't think anything else around him has really gotten better. He's lost one of the better O-linemen in his, offense, and he lost Jimmy Graham. However, in his favour, he has really good fixtures. He has like the third easiest fixtures across the whole season out of all the quarterbacks. He does have a bye early, which I don't think is ideal in fantasy because I reckon you want to have someone with a bye late because then you can you have a better feel for who to stream in for that week. And, it's a bit of a guess if it's like round 4, who to stream in. So that's also something to take into account. But in 2018, he was 6th, and 2017, he was 4th. So, I definitely could see a world where he just bounces back and is a top 10 QB. But for me, as Pilch said, I just don't really know who he's throwing to. And that second half of last year just really scared me because, yeah, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with him. He just seemed to be playing bad. In saying that, though, last year was his first year with the coach, so you think that would get better this year? You think they would, become a bit more in sync and the playbook would get more advanced, which might help his cause? But yeah, I've got him in 19th, but I'm willing to admit that's probably a bit harsh.
Bit of competition now as well, so he might have to step up.
Oh, come on, mate. They're not benching him. But nah,
Never know, mate.
Who knows? Who knows?
Does it James Winston, mate?
It might have been a wake-up call that if he wants to get another 4 or 5 years out of his career, he needs to go back to those 2017-18 seasons. That leads us into number 11, who was also tied with Aaron Rodgers on an average position of 13th. However, wait, I think I actually did this wrong. I think Rodgers should have been 11th. Roethlisberger should have been 12th. But yeah, anyway.
Really?
Yeah, because Curtis had Rodgers in 8th, and the highest for Roethlisberger was 9th, which was me. So Rodgers should have been 11th. Sorry about that. So Roethlisberger, changed that. Rodgers at 11th, Roethlisberger at 12th, but they're both tied, so it doesn't really matter. Roethlisberger in at 12th, it's a big gamble. It's a big call. But for me, all I have to look at really is that 2018 score. He averaged 21.3. He was the 5th ranked quarterback. And then in 2017, he was the 8th ranked quarterback as well. So he just really has a track record of being good at fantasy. And that's pretty much all I've got to say on him, really. He's behind a really good offensive line. He doesn't have the greatest offense, but it's certainly not bad by any stretch of the imagination. But in saying that year he did come 5th. He did have informed James Conner and Antonio Brown at his service. So you could argue without AB he'll be worse, but I think they've got enough there to help him out. So yeah, I've got him in 9th, and he's got a relatively easy start to the season as well, which lifts him in my eyes. You both had him in 15th, actually, exact same spot. Curtis, why'd you have him down at 15th?
Just when I was going through the list, I just couldn't see him being above any of the other boys I had ahead of him. To be honest, It was like as simple as that. And just you speaking then, like just thinking about it, AB, he's lost him and he had him in 2018, so that's a big scorer for him. Connors isn't probably as in form, or at least last year wasn't as in form as he was the year before, and now he's relying on Juju as his number one receiver, and Juju didn't really chop out last year. Let's be honest. He wasn't bad, but he kind of struggled relative to him being the second wide receiver. So I just don't see where he's racking up massive points from, like the other boys, like for example Rogers.
Pilch.
Yeah, obviously losing Antonio Brown is pretty big for Big Ben. But similar with Curtis, for me, there's just too much uncertainty to be drafting him above the other old timers like Brady, Rogers, Stafford, people like that. Just because he is coming off that big injury as well. He's 2 years older than he was when he had that good season a couple of years ago. And yeah, so that is why I have him below them.
Yeah. I think he's probably. There's a few people below him who probably have more upside, but like I'm not sure if it'll be this season that they break out. It might be in a couple of years. But yeah, ninth is probably a bit ambitious. I'll admit that. They did add Eric Ebron, who, although he's probably a bit of a myth to most people, 2 years ago when he was the starting tight end for the Colts, he was actually like one of the best tight ends in the league. So he might help out Big Ben, who's never really had a tall target before. Also, another thing that might be like, I know AB is a huge out, but another thing that might help him out is they've got such a good defense now that he's probably going to get more ball than he had in 2018 because there's going to be more turnovers and a lot more like fourth down shutouts and stuff like that. So that might help his cause as well. But yeah, he is 12th and Rogers is at 11th. So that moves us into 10th. Bit of variation on this bloke. We've got Matty Ryan. Oh, by the way, Ben Roethlisberger was actually at pick 15 on the Fantasy Pros like rankings, so you're both spot on there. Matt Ryan in at number 10, the Atlanta Falcons quarterback. He had an average position of 11 and 1/3 on Fantasy Pros. He was looking at pick 8th. Pilch, you also got him in 8th, who you had him at the highest. How come you've got him in at 8th?
Yeah, well, I actually really like Matt Ryan. I think he's a little bit underrated in the NFL, but especially this year, I think the Falcons have probably, I would say, a top 3 receiving core in the whole NFL this year with Julio and Calvin Ridley set to have a big breakout. And also bringing in Hayden Hurst at tight end. So for me, unlike Rodgers, he's got all these receivers to throw to, so I can see him reeling in the big yards. And obviously, he's a very talented QB as well. So I'm bullish on him.
Yeah, Ryan's a tough one for me, to be honest. I've got him in at 15th. Curtis, you had him in 11th, so I had him at the lowest. Similar to Rodgers, for me, he just had a really poor second half to last year. He ranked 20th in the second half of last season. So I do expect him to improve a little bit on that, but I can't think of a reason why he'll be much better, if I'm honest. He's got hard fixtures throughout the season, and he starts against pretty tough opponents. He's got a pretty bad offensive line to protect him, which is another thing that I don't like about him. And also something else that I factored in was, as we talked about on the last NFL podcast, I'm not sure what Todd Gurley's going to produce, but let's say if Todd Gurley comes back and he's, running it 10 to 15 times a game, well, you would think they would start becoming a more balanced passing running team as opposed to last year where they were predominantly pass because Devontae Freeman sucks. So I think they might take a few pass attempts away from Matty Ryan there. Coitus, you've got him in at number 11th, mate. Why have you got him sitting there?
Experienced head on him. got Julio Ridley with him, so he's pretty stacked in the wide receivers. And then what they really lacked last year was a running back to complement them and him. So they got Gurley. We're not sure how good he's going to be just because he's the most injury-prone player in the NFL. But yeah, we'll have to see if Gurley's even like 75% of what he was in that 2018 season. Then I reckon Ryan could have a good season and rack up a few points because then they're just not looking straight at Ryan and blitzing him. They're having to worry about a bit of a run game now as well, and then you got your two big wide receivers. So yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. Like I was saying that having a better running back's a bad thing, but it can definitely work in his favor because all of a sudden they could be scoring 10 more points a game, meaning like he's getting more passing yards, more passing touchdowns as well.
Yeah, I think the Falcons have much bigger touchdown upside this year because they were woeful last year, and in our prediction video, I think we all had them to improve quite a bit in terms of the season. So yeah, that's another thing in his favour.
Yeah, he's an interesting one to pick because you think by this stage of his career he'd be a bit more like a Rodgers or a Brady, where you kind of know how about they're going to do. But in 2017, he was the 24th ranked quarterback. In 2018, he was the 4th. And then last year, he was the 12th. So kind of up and down. So a tough one to predict. And he's also lost, although Hayden Hurst has come in, who could be a star for them, they lost Austin Hooper, who was like one of his favourite targets, which that'll be interesting to see. This next one, we've all had him very similar. So number 9, we've got Matthew Stafford. I had him at 10th, Pilch 11. Oh, yeah, Pilch 11, Curtis 12. So, Curtis, why'd you have him in at number 12, mate?
Well, it's pretty similar to a few others. Like, I just looked through the list and thought who was better than him, just chucked them above him. But he was a bit of a bowler last year when he was playing. Like, I even got him in my team at one point just because he was whipping up numbers until he did his back. But yeah, I think he'll be similar to last year in terms he'll still rack up points, I reckon. And yeah, he loves to sling it, so that's always a good thing. Plenty of touchdowns there, but obviously it means inconsistencies in terms of interceptions, stuff like that. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, Pilch, what about you, mate?
Yeah, you're a bit of a fan of Stafford after what he did for your fantasy team last season, Curtis. But obviously the broken back is a concern. But he does have weapons in Golladay and Marvin Jones. He balled out last season, so I mean, if he's fit, which isn't if, but if he is, then I can't see any reason why he would be outside the top 12. I mean, he loves to throw a touchdown, and they're a pass heavy offense, so I'm positive about Staffney.
Yeah, fair enough. Here I've got written down, I found some offensive rankings and stuff, and they expected the Lions to drop from 18th to 25th, but I just looked at their outs and ins, and I can't really see what the logic behind that one is. Their O-line did take a little bit of a hit, but surely that's not important enough to do that. Yeah, he has fairly nice fixtures as well, despite being in a very tight division. He has like the 8th easiest according to the Fantasy Pros website. At the moment, he's ranked 12th on the Fantasy Pros site. So spot on there, Russell Coit. But yeah, another tough one to predict because last year, as you mentioned, Curtis, he was awesome. Like he was 7th overall in terms of points, and then in the second half of the year, I think he only played one game or something, but he averaged he got like 26 in that game or something, so he was looking really good. But then in 2018, he was the 38th ranked quarterback, and he played every single game, so that is a bit of a concern for me and probably stops me from having him higher, because if you just go based on last year, it's kind of hard to see why he's not going to be good this season. And then, so Stafford was tied with Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. But we had Josh Allen a bit higher, me and Pilch. However, Curtis, You had the big fella down at number 18. We chatted a little bit about this last night because I thought I just found it interesting that you had Allen so low given your love for the dual threat. So do you want to explain why you've got him down at 18, mate?
I just see him in the same category as like Jones and Darnold. Like if you think about last year, if you watched him, he fumbled like every single game. He loved to fumble. He's in a defensive heavy team. He didn't rack up many points, like not in terms of fantasy points, but in terms of like points in the scoreboard.
Yeah.
And I just don't see how he's a top 12 quarterback in fantasy when, you compare it to other dual threat quarterbacks and you compare to say like Mahomes, Wilson, Breeze. I just didn't see him. Just couldn't see him above like all of them and in the top 12 quarterbacks in fantasy. Like it was pretty simple. Like, and I just see him in the same category as those young up and comers. He's not a fully complete quarterback yet. He's probably going to improve relative to last year, but he plays in the cold. There's a lot against him in terms of racking up big points. To be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Curtis is aware how highly Josh Allen was ranked last season. Where was he, Cork?
Well, when you adjust for his injury-affected game with a concussion, he was 10th.
10th.
And he was 7th in the second half of the season.
I can't see any reason why he wouldn't improve, as Curtis said. And they've added Stephon Diggs into their wide receiver artillery. So he did rely heavily on his rushing touchdowns, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Which will probably come down because that was a bit of an anomaly there. But I think I had him at number 7. So yeah, I rate him pretty highly.
Yeah, you had him at number 7. Fantasy Pros also had him at number 7. But as you said, Pilch, he did rely heavily on the rushing touchdowns, and if a few more go to Stephon Diggs and Devin Singletary improves up the middle, he might take a few away from him. But yeah, as you were saying, Pilch, I'm not too sure how he's going to get like much worse, if at all worse. So
yeah, and he's like really young.
Strange footy from Kurt, but fair play. He has added a way better wide receiver than what he had last year as well. So you think that will improve his throwing?
Watch me words, boys. Watch me words. He's gonna be trash this year, mate. Absolute trash.
Yeah, I'm not.
Darnold jumps him. Jones jumps him.
I agree
Mayfield
with
jumps
all
him.
The points you're making. Like, I don't think he's the 7th best quarterback in the league, but it's just the fantasy game.
Yeah,
like
trust me.
There's
I don't even understand. How was he 7th? They hardly scored last year. We're talking most of their wins are like 17-14.
He had
their defense just carried them through.
Yeah, it's because he had like a rushing touch. I think he had like 8 rushing touchdowns or something, which is what's that, like 6 points or something. So that's
gonna be Mayfield a pile of shit, then fucking Allen, mate.
All right. But yeah, no, fair enough, Kurt. Fair enough. Not too sure the logic there. All right, this is probably the last person that we vary a lot in our selection. So we've got Drew Brees at number 7. The top 6 is all pretty similar. So we've got Drew Brees at number 7. Pilch, you had him in at 10. Curtis, you had him in at 9, but I had him in at 4.
Ooh.
Fantasy Pros had him at 10 as well, so similar to you two. But for me, I just think 10's pretty stiff. If you actually adjust his average last year, because he had that game where against the Rams, where he hurt his finger, so he came out after 4 attempts. So if you take away that from his average, he actually averaged the second highest in the whole competition last season with 22.88. So just from that alone, his offense hasn't got worse. His O-line's improved, if anything. So I don't see why he would be slipping down to 10. He is getting older, but it's not like he's a dual threat QB, really. He has always relied on his throwing, and that didn't look like slowing down at all last year. And one thing you always want in a NFL QB is to play for a good team, really, because they're going to be putting up a lot of points each week, and the Saints are going to be really good again this year. So I like Drew Brees this year. I like him a lot. Pilch, why have you got him down at 10?
Yeah, well, I think his ADP is around 7 or 8, so I've been a little bit stiff on him, but obviously he balled out at the end of last year, but I think that 22.8 is quite a bit above his mean, so I just basically expect him to regress back to his average a bit. And after my top 7, it was sort of a pick out of a hat for the old timer tier, is what I call it, with your Brady's, Breezes, Rogers, Staffords. And yeah, he just ended up at 10.
Fair enough, mate. Very fair. Well, it's not fair enough, actually. You just said you've picked him out of a hat, basically. But Curtis, what was your logic behind having him in at number 9?
Obviously I love a dual threat, but to be honest, it shouldn't really matter with Breeze just because Breeze is absolute jet. But I don't know. I was a bit worried about injury last year. He got injured a bit, and Bridgewater had to come in and save him a bit. So that was a big concern for me. So obviously, you don't really want to be changing up your QBs too much in fantasy because they require quite a bit to get a decent trade in. So, if you want to go decent QB for a decent QB and he's injured, your opponent might ask for quite a bit in return. So you kind of want to get someone who's not too injury prone. So that was actually a big concern for me when actually looking at it. And then obviously I was just a bit worried also about maybe the cohesiveness of the team, just considering, that in the off season there has been a bit of a chatter about that in relation to the Black Lives Matter protests and the kneeling. So I was just a bit interested about that. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, he's definitely a top 12, top 10 QB in terms of fantasy, but he might be lacking in terms of the injury department and, ensuring that he's on the field.
Yeah, fair enough. Pretty sound logic there, mate. So then at number 6, we have Kyler Murray.
Hang on, why do you have him at 4, Cork?
Just because of that average.
Oh, yeah, sorry. My bad.
Put him at number 2 last year, so I can't see why he'd slip too much lower. Kyler, we had him at number 6. Pilch, you're very high on Kyler. You had him at number 3, whereas me and Russell had him down at 7. The Fantasy Pro rankings had him at number 5. So, Pilch, why have you got him so high?
Yeah, I'm surprised that Curtis didn't have him a little bit higher as well with all this dual threat talk. But obviously, apart from Jackson, he's probably the second best rushing QB, I would say. And he's added, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins into his arsenal. And going into his 3rd year, just natural improvement on him. I think he'll be a star this year. And he was very good last year as well, especially in the second half of the season. So I've got him at 3.
Yeah, I think we're all going to have pretty similar logic with Murray. It's just, I don't know about you, Curtis, but I think he's 100% agree with everything you just said. I just don't think he's going to improve enough to get to 3 necessarily this season.
Yeah, it's just like I literally just didn't see him being better than, say, a Russell Wilson or being better than, say, a Prescott. So yeah, it just simply came back to like looking at the QBs and then looking at their pros and flaws and then determining whether you saw them as being better than the other QBs. And obviously, he's going to be an average team as well, so they're not exactly going to be, especially in the division they're in, like arguably the hardest division in the NFL. So
I do see upside in the Cardinals as well. I think they won't make the playoffs, but they will be better than last year, and their offense will definitely be better than last year.
For sure, but they're playing the Rams twice. They're going to play the Niners twice. They're playing the Seahawks twice, and all.
They'll beat the Niners.
Yeah, but doesn't mean they couldn't beat the Niners this year.
That's what I'm
so it's a pretty. Oh, they'll beat the Niners. I thought you said they beat them last year.
No, they will beat them.
I don't know, mate. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's a stacked division, so it's some tough competition. So it doesn't mean he's actually going to be on the O is going to be on the feel that much as relative to other teams, so it doesn't mean he gets exactly the opportunity to rack up points in the fantasy.
Yeah, I definitely think he has probably one of the biggest upsides out of all the QBs on this list in terms of where he was last year to where he will be this year. Similar to what Curtis said, that's something I just didn't like. Pretty much all the quarterbacks above him play for playoff teams who are going to pile on points each week, except for one who I'm not sure how their team's going to go this year, but we'll talk about that in a sec. Kyler Murray at 3, fair enough. I like him as a pick just because he has a lot of upside, but he's probably not. There's probably safer picks out there that you want to be taking early, but if you're a gambling man like Pilch is, he loves his sports bet. I can't see why he wouldn't take the big K Murray. Now, number 5, we have big Rusty Wilson. I had him at 5. Pilch had him at 6. Curtis had him at 4. Fantasy Pros had him at 4 as well.
Really?
Curtis, why do you have him at 4?
Had a great year last year. Arguably the best dual quarterback. Probably, arguably the founder of a shorter QB as well. Someone sub 6 foot kind of ish. So just a beast all around. Don't see how he won't be racking up points this year. He's got Metcalf, which I think is going to be an absolute star. And I think he's only going to get better. So he's got a real good wide receiver in him. Still got Lockett. Not sure if he's going to have as big a year as he did last year, but I just still see him racking up points. I just don't see how he's not going to be a top 5 fantasy QB. Perfect dual threat quarterback. So if you can't get it done throwing, you can get it done running. He's going to be racking up points, and that's why I have him around 4 or 5.
Yeah, Pilch.
Like with Breeze, I just think his average will just naturally come down a bit because he obviously had an unreal fantasy year last year, especially in the first half of the year. But yeah, he'll obviously be right up there in the top 6, but I just think Kyler Murray will become a better version of Russ himself. And I like Murray and the other 2 blokes who we're about to mention a little bit more than Wilson.
Yeah, I do have Wilson above Murray by 2 spots, but I have to say on draft night, if they're there both for the taking, I wouldn't be surprised if I went with Kyler. Just I don't know.
Who has a better arm? Kyler?
Well, Wilson, but Murray has more potential to be a top 2, top 3 quarterback. Where we probably know Russell Wilson's going to be somewhere between 4 and 6 or something like that. Wilson's probably arguably one of the safest picks. I think the Seahawks are going to be there and there or thereabouts once again this year, so they're going to have to get their points somewhere, and it's probably not going to be too much from the running game. So Big Rusty will be racking up the points as he did last year. But he actually has fairly easy fixtures, which is surprising given the fact that he's in that division. But fair enough. So number 4. Tight one between Russell and this bloke, but we had Deshaun Watson. Me and Pilch had him at 6 and 5. Kurt, you had him at 3, and Fantasy Pros had him at 6. Curtis, why have you got the big fella at number 3?
It was pretty similar. Like when I just obviously dual threat, love a dual threat, as I've said about 6 times. So we'll continue with that trend. But
keep saying I like
it. I just looked at him. I just compared him to the QBs I had below, which I'm surprised one of them is ahead, but we'll talk about that later. And I just thought he was 3rd on my list, to be honest. I was like, if it comes draft night, who am I going to pick 3rd? And he was in at 3rd. Great arm on him, got legs on him. I don't know if their O-line's improved. I'm hoping it has, because it's been pretty shit for quite a while. So if it's improved, big win. But he's obviously lost. Has he lost Hopkins? He's lost Hopkins.
He's lost Hopkins. Yeah.
So that's a big loss for him. But yeah, I just a beast of the competition, and I think he's just gonna whip up points. There's not real much logic to it, unfortunately, but is what it is.
Pilch?
Yeah, well, for me, the factor between Watto and Kyler Murray is basically the Hopkins factor. If Hopkins was still at the Texans, then I probably would have had them reversed. But just because of Hopkins, I've gone Murray ahead of him. But obviously, dual threat. Yep, I had him at 5, one place ahead of Wilson, just because he'll get running touchdowns, running yards, and he's still a great QB. So yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. You've pretty much said it all. Just superstar of the competition. The only thing for Deshaun Watson is he didn't end the year great last year. In the second half, he had the 11th highest average, which is probably not what you want for someone who you'd have to be taking, in like the fourth or fifth round of the draft. And he also has very tough fixtures to start the competition. He has the 30th ranked fixtures, so the third hardest in the comp. And then in the first 3 matches, he's actually got the hardest out of anyone. So although in the long term it might pay off, you might have to just put up with some tough ones early on and just weather that storm. But yeah, I've got him at 6. Just, yeah, as you guys said, just superstar. Can't really see why he'll regress too much, if at all. He's still young, so natural progressions should see him be good. And I'm not too sure if the Hopkins loss is going to hurt him too much, if I'm honest. Although, as you see with like Breeze and Thomas, it can be pivotal to have someone who you can rely on. I think spreading your targets across a wide receiving core might help his game as well, though, because maybe sometimes, he was too busy looking at Hopkins when there were other options open, but we'll see how that goes. Now into the top 3. Curtis, you said you weren't too happy with number 3, but for me, I reckon the top 2 is clear. Like, I think they're way better than everyone else. And then from about 3rd to 8th, it's all like pretty close. But fair enough. If you're not happy with this number 3, you're just gonna have to cop. We've got Big Dak as Prescott. Fantasy Pros had him at number 3 as well, so we've done well there. I had him at number 3, Pilch number 4, Curtis number 5. Curtis, why aren't you happy with Dak coming in at number 3?
Oh, well, now I'm just thinking about, like, back Russell over him, back Watson over him. I know. I just, like, to be honest, when I just think about it, when it's come down to the wire and, the teams needed a TD and, that's another TD he gets on fantasy. He hasn't been able to do it. He's always fallen short a bit. I guess he has now. Who did they draft actually? Who now
CD.
in a bit of mind
CD's
blank.
not. CD.
CD.
Pardon? Yep, CD. Yeah, weapon. I've had a mind blank there, boys. Sorry about that one. But yeah,
But you're
CD's a
big
weapon.
fan.
So
You're a big fan.
CD is actually a weapon. So to be fair, actually, I can see why you might have him at 3 because he's obviously got Zeke with him as well. But then again, Zeke might take a few points off him. If Zeke performs a bit better this year relative to last year. He didn't perform badly last year, but, it could be a bit better. So if Zeke performs a bit better, he might take a bit more ball time and consequently you might lose a few more points from Prescott.
Pilch?
Yeah, well, as you said, they drafted Lamb, and he's absolutely loaded with offensive weapons, great O-line. And where did he finish last season, Corker?
6th.
6th, yeah. So based on that, there's not really any real reason to say why he wouldn't improve in terms of fantasy. He's obviously a worse quarterback than these other boys we have up here, but in terms of fantasy, it's hard to see him not producing numbers, even though I don't really like him. But yeah, he's got to be up there, just based on that.
I completely agree. By the way, to those listening, my rankings have been like adjusted for games where they were injured after like a quarter or something. So if you Google it, they might be a couple spots off. But yeah, Dak, you've pretty much said it all, really. Just can't see them putting up big scores on a regular basis, to be honest, with the attacking weapons they have. Like, I think it will be a pretty common sight to wake up to the Cowboys having to put on like 40 or something, even if it means they've conceded 30 themselves. similar, opposite to Kyla, actually, they're in a shite division as well, which
Very fair, actually.
which
yeah.
will help him, especially early on, because you usually, play your division early, and it actually might also help you in the fantasy playoffs if they, have a game against the Giants or Washington late on. But yeah, great O-line, great weapons, better attacking coach this year, as Garrett was one of the worst attacking coaches, so can't really see why he's not going to improve on that 6th position last year. So yeah, I like Dak this year for fantasy, but yeah, as you said, Pilch, pretty rude that a quarterback of his caliber is up around these gods of the comp. But
I've just realised something.
What?
Carson Wentz hasn't made the top 12. That means one of you boys has dogged him hard. Curtis?
Yeah.
We'll
touch on it. We'll touch on it on the next quarterback episode. As we
Didn't even make my 20.
Yeah, he didn't make Curtis 22. Curtis picked 22, didn't make it.
I picked 22. I had Jimmy G above it.
Yeah, so we'll
Curtis,
discuss.
mate, that's a disgrace.
We'll discuss all the omissions in the next episode. Next week.
You like your dual threat quarterbacks, do you, Curtis? Clearly, mate. If you've chucked Carson Wentz outside your top 22.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
let me
Curtis
know
actually got dogged. Curtis got dogged as well because his number 6 was Big Cam, and he missed out. So
Cam should be in there. Let me know when Wentz is on the. Let me know when Wentz is on the pitch, mate, to get your scores, and then come back to me, mate.
Yeah, all right. So we'll discuss.
Newton missed the whole year with injury, mate.
Yeah, but that's the point. Now he's fully fit.
Sorry, mate.
And he's playing a beast team with the best coach of all time. How is he not racking up points? I'm sorry, but how is he not racking up points?
Mate, the Patriots have no weapons.
You don't need weapons, mate. You need a system.
All right, we'll see, mate.
We'll save this for the next episode. So we're going to chat about the people who missed out on our 12. I would like to say I did not rig this, but none of my top 10 missed out. So thank you. So that leaves us to our top 2. Everyone knows who they are. It's just a matter of what order we had them in. Sitting at number 2, we have the 400. I think it's in Australian dollars. I think it's 504 million or something. It was a quiz question on a sporting quiz I did the other day. I think it was $504 million man. Across 10 years, just re-signed. Patrick Mahomes the second, or is it the third?
Did we all have him at 2, or did someone?
I had him at 1.
I like that.
I did have him at 1.
And Fantasy Pros have him at number 1 as well, which is
really
for those
Fantasy Pros agrees with me.
I think it's a case of you agreeing with Fantasy Pros. I think you.
I wonder where Fantasy Pros had Wentz as well, mate. Just interested about
at number 9, actually. So you've got yourself.
Where did they have Cam, mate? Where did they have Cam?
19. Yeah. So those wondering, Fantasy Pros is it's a website, and they have a ranking where they, like we've done here today, they get 100 people's rankings, and they correlate them or whatever, combine them.
Watch Cam be a beast, mate.
Why do you have Mahomes above Lamar, Kurt?
I just don't know if Lamar's going to be able to back up the year he had before in terms of not just fantasy but on the pitch performance. He had a real good year, and it's only going to take one team to work out what the fuck they're doing, and then every other team to follow them, and it's going to fuck up their whole system and fuck up his chance of racking up points. Plus, I'm a bit concerned as well. I mean, it's pretty unjustified considering he hasn't really got injured, but I'm worried about him getting injured as well. There's a genuine chance that, this year could be the year he gets injured and he's out for half the year.
Well, so he takes a lot of hits. So
he does take a lot of hits. So it's a concern, but it's something you're going to take with a player of the caliber of Lamar, because obviously I had him at 2, so he's still up there. But yeah, I just think Mahomes has got a bit more on him, and Mahomes is going to have to show up that $504 million deal, so he might have a bit of fire in him and rack up some points, hopefully.
Yeah. it's a pretty weird debate, really, because it's like I think any of us would chop off our fingers to be rolling in round one with one of these fellas.
Not sure about chopping off my fingers.
Come on, mate. It's figure of
Mate, I'm
speech.
not going to draft them above a running back, mate.
Well, you know what I mean in terms of quarterbacks. Come on, you dogs. Yeah, for me, I've got Lamar above Mahomes. I wouldn't be surprised if he fell back a little bit, but he has a 6-point buffer on Patrick Mahomes, so he can regress 3 whole points and still be a solid 3 points above Mahomes if Mahomes averaged similar to last season. Yeah, neither of them, their position has really changed. Like, I don't think either of them have brought in offensive weapons, really. Lamar, they drafted running back, but that won't affect him. Lamar probably could have used a wide receiver or something, but, he doesn't throw that much, so it might not affect him. They both have pretty similar fixture difficulties. Lamar has a lot easier fixtures at the start, but then it levels out because they're 16th and 22nd, respectively, in fixture difficulty. So, yeah, I think it's really just lucky dip out of these two. But, yeah, I prefer Lamar because I can't see a situation where Lamar has a bad game because no matter how bad the Ravens play, he's still going to get like 100 yards on the ground. Like, I just don't see how he's not going to, which is an automatic 10 points, and then he's just got to do the bare basics to, get above 15. So I just can't see a world where Lamar has a real shocker of a game where, not saying P. Mahomes is ever going to whip out a 4 on a regular occurrence, but like, if they come up against a really good defense and he struggles to get the ball over the line, who knows? But yeah, Pilch, what was your logic behind it?
Yeah, well, as he said, the 6 point, he beat him by 6 average points per game. I agree with Curtis. There's absolutely zero chance Jackson averages more than he did last year. That was just insane. I know he'll come down, even if it's just a little bit. And then with Mahomes, the old premiership hangover and the huge money deal, we've seen it before. Players can slack off when they get that huge contract. Not saying Mahomes will, but there is a chance. And obviously the premiership hangover. And in that argument, the Ravens will definitely come out firing after a poor playoffs performance last year. So that's in Jackson's favour. But yeah, the rushing stuff is just fantasy is just all about rushing for QBs. Like if you're rushing for 50 yards, it's a free 5 points, and Jackson goes over 100 regularly. So I can't see Mahomes catching up to him in terms of points per game.
Yeah, pretty fair logic from both of you, though. I can see both sides of the argument. Just a shout out to the coach of Mish's Men for trading Lamar Jackson after round 1. Probably
for Newton.
Probably the greatest decision a fantasy coach has ever made. But I have to say, I'm proud of myself. I don't care that I trade him. I had him at number 7 in my preseason rankings, and no one had him in like their top 15. So I'll take that from myself, even though me trading him, ruined my chances of being half decent. But so that's pretty much it for the episode. That's our top 12. I've actually enjoyed it. Discussing.
You should have been there, mate. Just all I gotta say.
Yeah. So we'll chat about the people who missed out in an upcoming episode. Hopefully, we're both joined by the same. Well, I'm joined by the same gang that I have here today. I was discussing this with Pilch the other day. Might chat about it in an earlier in an episode upcoming, because I don't think anyone's probably listening at this point. But Kurt, what do you think about this? I was thinking of running a league through the On the Ball podcast. So what I was thinking was on like Instagram or something, I'll just send out let me know if you want to be in it. And then each week, I'll do an episode where we like review the league's week, or maybe fortnightly, and we discuss like the big trades that happened, the big wins for each player and coach and team and stuff like that.
I think that'd be another league I'll get to win. So
yeah, because you've
won. Didn't win last year. I
Yeah.
pumped you in the semis.
Yeah, Hitler's oven pumped you.
Oh, I can't be saying that on
To
mine.
those,
You can't say that. You can't say that.
well, you made it your name, mate, on fantasy. How else am I meant to
What?
say it?
You
Why are
can't.
you exposing me?
Oh man! All right, that'll wrap us up, I think.
Wait, so I've changed my name, Newton, for MVP. Thank you.
Yeah, on his list, he had Jimmy G at 21. He wrote in brackets, "Got to get around my man," or something like that. But yeah, so tune in next week if you want to hear us chat about the 20 other quarterbacks that missed out today. And yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me, boys. Been a good episode.
Thanks for having
Cheers,
me,
mate.
Cook.
And yeah, enjoy your weekend. Cheers.
When sucks.